The Podski with John Baker. For over 1 year, the revolutionary force in audio entertainment.
Oh, yeah!
Brother,
Let me talk to you! Freak out, freak out!
I just had an out-of-body experience!
The insane in the membrane!
Brother!
Yeah! And I'm here for only one reason, and that's to take it to the limit, yeah!
Somebody stop the damn man!
I'm living on the edge.
Who is your daddy?
Hello and welcome to the Podski. I'm your host, Johnny Bake Show, and ringside with me is Teddy Mongoose. We are back with another jam-packed episode today, and we are reviewing Monday Night Raw from July 26th, 2004. And this edition of Raw is special in particular because the main event was a 60-minute Ironman match for the World Heavyweight Championship between Chris Benoit and Triple H. We also get to see a 20-man battle royal, and the winner is the challenger for the World Heavyweight Championship at Summerslam. So whoever wins the Ironman match gets to face the winner of the battle royal. So this Raw had so many stakes to it. It was a big one. But before we dive into that, we want to remind you all that the Eddie Guerrero show is available now. It is on the channel, so please go check that out. It is excellent. We encourage everyone that is listening to this, go check that out because we think you'll really enjoy it. We're still planning on that Scott Hall bonus episode for next month. By the time this is posted, it will be that month. So we are on the road here to the Scott Hall bonus episode. So be on the lookout for that. But we got to bring Teddy in here for the full breakdown of what's going on in July of 2004 in the world of WWE. And we left off with Vengeance 2004, which was our last dive into 2004. So what do we got going on post Vengeance?
Good day, sir. And so for those who are either new to the show or need a little refresher before we move on into our, basically we're getting ready for SummerSlam season here. This is the primer for SummerSlam season. A couple of reminders for main event threads that are going to take us into the main event tonight. So our main results from the Vengeance show were Edge beating Randy Orton for the Intercontinental Championship. Eugene and Ric Flair team up together. They lose via DQ to La Resistance for the Tag Team Championships.
Great.
And Flair wants nothing to do with Eugene the whole time. And all Eugene's doing is just making me and John hug each other and giggle with glee.
It's so good. It's so good.
And then we have Chris Benoit beating Triple H after Eugene inadvertently hits Triple H with a chair, which allowed Benoit to roll up Hunter to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. So that's where we left off. We're going to catch you guys up from the Raw after that show up to the main event, which is going to be our 60-minute Ironman match from Pittsburgh, PA. But before we do, let's take a snapshot look at business in June. We'll cover July business and then some August whenever we get into SummerSlam time. But for right now, the important thing to look at business-wise is this is in the middle of the WWE running its 3 pay-per-views in 6 weeks experiment. So we had the Bad Blood show and then the Great American Bash almost back-to-back, literally 2 weeks apart. Right after that, we had the Vengeance show, which we just went over the results of that. So business in June 2004 is really interesting. So the estimated average attendance for June 2004 is 4,362 people a show. This is actually down 9% year over year, but it is up since May. Now check this out. May had 3,878 per show. So we're up about 500 people month over month. The attendance is up, and mainly because the Raws were in Dayton and Miami, which really helped, especially that Miami show where they knew that The Rock was coming.
Yeah.
And then there was an MSG house show. So that helped to boost it big time. SmackDown, however, had 4 different house shows canceled that month because of low advances.
And that's crazy to think because I enjoyed SmackDown here. I guess people really were not digging what was going on with JBL.
I guess the problem is not so much what's going on with JBL, but more so that there's no card.
That, yeah,
It's Eddie and JBL.
it is.
And if you already saw it once, do you want to see it again? And there's no angle, like there's no big hitters on this show. And so I think that that's the main reason, is that the card itself isn't something, especially when you've already seen the main event marquee on pay-per-view a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. No,
And you're going to see it again.
right.
So yeah, but because of those 4 shows being canceled, that definitely helped the average, because if they didn't cancel those, you're probably looking at the Observer estimated about 1,500 per show.
Ooh.
So that's really, really going to dip those down. The other thing is SmackDown's house shows during this month were down about 600 people per show from the month prior. But the month prior, they were running primarily Latino markets, as that was the push toward the LA show that did 10,000 people with JBL, that legit did 10,000 people or whatever. So interesting numbers attendance wise. When we look at the average gate, we are at $154,000 a show. That's actually up year over year. And it's up $20,000 compared to May 2004. And before you think, oh, wow, did they raise ticket prices or what? No, the answer is there was 2 pay-per-views during that month.
Yeah. So they're cooking the books a little bit here.
Yeah. So the gates are up because there was 2 pay-per-views, which are going to have a higher premium compared to your regular shows anyways. Percentage of shows sold out in June 2004, 0. Not one.
That's really crazy to say, because those Raw shows, I remember when we were doing all that lead up to Bad Blood and Vengeance, we were talking about the Raws and how good they were, and that it didn't even pique interest in ticket sales.
Correct. Big houses, but not sold out shows.
Correct.
And that's the difference there. The average Raw rating is 3.73. That is up compared to the month prior, but it is down slightly year over year. And the Observer says that this actually was skewed because of that Rock show. If The Rock didn't come out on that show, that these numbers would have been further down, because he popped a number whenever he came back on that one.
That's really crazy to sit here and think about, the fact that like their business relatively year over year looks good, but it's just because they ran all of those pay-per-views. And if it wouldn't be for the pay-per-views, the business would be in a not great spot right here.
Pay-per-views and The Rock. You can't forget The Rock showing back up on TV, And then we look at SmackDown with no Rock, and they are down year over year in rating 7.5%. They're at a 3.10, but they're actually up compared to the month of May. However, that month of May was the lowest average month ever. And it also should be noted that they were averaging about 4.7 million viewers per week during the month of June. And that is down from 5.5 to 5.6 it regularly did up until about 2 months ago.
That's insane to think that SmackDown was getting 5.5 million viewers. 5.5.
And yeah, and the thing here is that please check out the Eddie Show. Please check out the Great American Bash Show. But the reality is, these viewers are down and interest is down because there's nothing on this show except Eddie Guerrero.
That is very true, because Kurt's out with the neck, quote unquote, out.
Correct. And I mean, and he's on TV, but he's, as a GM, the shine wears off after a little bit. You know what I mean? You need people to play foil too. And Eddie and Kurt had a good thing, but by no means was this, Austin and McMahon.
No, not even close.
Yeah. And so that's, you give them a gutted roster, and that's sort of what happens. So the last thing business wise is the June 2004 Bad Blood show did 9,000 fans, 7,500 paid, $494,000 live gate, an estimated 0.47 buy rate, and it brought in $3.83 million in company revenue. You compare that with Bad Blood '03, which was Triple H versus Nash in the Hell in a Cell with Foley as the ref, and then also had Michaels versus Flair. That show did 10,000 fans, $500,000 live gate, 0.75 buy rate, and a $5.86 million company pay-per-view revenue. So Bad Blood year over year was down 37.3% in buy rate, and then revenue was down 32.1%.
Man.
So a hit. The Great American Bash finished with a $320,000 live gate, a 0.44 buy rate, and $3.61 million in company revenue, which is only $200,000 under that Bad Blood show. You know, people thought the Great American Bash was such a disaster.
Right.
And then compare that with Judgment Day. Judgment Day in May did 18,722 people, 13,500 paid, $813,000 live gate. The problem with that was it only did a 0.38 buy rate. So there was only $3 million in revenue there.
Right. And the reason they have so many is because that's the one that was at, well, what is Crypto, but that's at Staples Center. Like it was the big LA show.
And it was also the show that nobody believed JBL was going to be worth anything in. And so people didn't buy.
Yeah.
He looked like a transitional guy, and he ended up being the damn champion for a year straight or whatever. All right, bro. So that's where we are business wise. Let's turn up the heat. Let's put our thumb and index finger on the knob. Let's twist this thing. John, take us into this week's Ric Flair book report.
Yes, the July 19th Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're diving back into the Ric Flair book because there is much more controversy that follows here. The book will open at number 20 on the New York Times bestseller list, and there have been reports around the country, but more concentrated in the Northeast and the Carolinas, that the book is sold out in stores. That makes 100% sense.
Yep.
On Amazon, it is the most successful than any other wrestling book in years, which is kind of crazy. We're talking about Amazon because that's the original Amazon, was just strictly books.
Straight up books. You better believe it. Bought and sold my textbooks on there whenever I was in school.
But it should be noted that Austin and the Hardys book both peaked at 11 on the New York Times bestseller list, and Hulk Hogan and Kurt Angle's books were close to that as well. Out of all of them, Hogan's was considered the biggest disappointment, as it had more mainstream advertising behind it than any wrestling book in history.
I actually never had the Hogan book in hand, nor even thought about it. But Kurt Angle's book is really good. I bought that. I bought that when I was in high school, and I loved it. I thought that it was awesome.
I want to read that Kurt Angle book. There's so many books I want to read.
Kurt's chronicles him like going to college and not wanting to cut weight because he didn't want to get down in weight. So he literally wrestled his natural weight through high school and college, which is even crazier because you're in a sport that's predicated on you trying to be as low as possible. Yeah. Like there's really neat stuff about Kurt in his book. Nothing earth shattering,
right?
But it's a solid read.
So back to the book. And this is where we're turning up the heat. We're cranking it up here. This week's book highlight will be the Vince Russo portrayal. This is interesting because Mark Madden, who we mentioned before, he edited the entire book for Ric Flair. Mark Madden and Vince Russo at the time have been good friends for years. So while Rick absolutely buries him for the storylines, Russo doesn't really take that much of a beating, obviously, because Madden's going to be there to save him.
Madden looked out for him a little bit. Yep.
That's a brother move. So Rick, on having to put Russo over in a cage match, this is what Rick had to say. With everything that I had accomplished throughout my career, this is what it had come to at 51 years of age. Do you know how it felt lying there on the canvas with fake blood splattered all over me after losing to a magazine writer? You figure it out.
Man, I could hear these words coming out of his mouth.
Oh, yes.
Do you know how it felt with fake blood all over me?
Woo!
You figure it out.
Yeah. Here is Rick's thoughts on him having to shave his head. My hair had been such a big part of my persona that it killed me to go through with it. But at this stage, I was so beaten down that I just rolled up into a ball. I was willing to do anything that would get me time off and away from that bullshit in the dressing room. He ultimately did put him over. He promised paid time off after the head shaving, but basically the company was bleeding money. They were cutting wrestlers' salaries who were out of action. Flair called Russo about this, and Russo actually did what he had to do to make him whole. Flair said, despite our differences, when he gave his word to me, he wanted it to mean something.
And with that, those I love, you picked two juicy ones here, but there's plenty of it. And especially in this Observer issue, I do recommend that anybody that's interested, go back, check out the July 19th Observer newsletter, or get the book yourself. This is John and I say now every week that every time we talk about this, that this is must read. Like, this is getting to the point where I need to see all of this stuff. I'm going to give some of Meltzer's thoughts here. And again, this is from the July 19th, 2004 Observer newsletter. Check that out. If not, get the book or do both. John and I say every time that we go through this, that this is getting into must-read territory, which somehow will sneak in between watching TVs and pay-per-views and all of this stuff from 20 and 25 years ago with like 1994 sprinkled in there. But anyways, Meltzer writes that Luger and Nash were actually far more damaging to Flair, as they were the type to seek and then try to keep power. So they were like the snakes, do you know what I mean? And the clever ones, Nash especially, dude. Everybody loves Big Kev.
Oh, yeah.
And he also noted that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were both buddies of Mark Madden. And so it wasn't surprising to Meltzer that there wasn't a whole lot of outsider burial here. Dave says that Russo, on the other hand, knew that they needed to create new stars, and those new stars could only be created if older stars put them over. But how he actually implemented that strategy was a complete disaster. And not just the storylines, but pushing too many new stars at once means that none of them get over. There's no one to really concentrate on.
Yeah.
So there's some really interesting behind the scenes nuggets that Dave sprinkles in here, including Zane Breslov being very, very strongly in favor of a Hogan Flair babyface tag team.
Wow.
So business was going down in 99. And one of
that.
Yes. And this was a Zane Breslov idea. Let's put these two together as a babyface tag and let's sell out some houses. Flair was negative on it, said it was something he didn't want to do. And so they never did it.
That's crazy. I didn't even think that would even be a possibility.
Dave even says that, like, and they didn't even try it when the two came back. So I don't know if it got brought back up again in 2002, but like, I thought that was a really interesting.
That would be such a cool tag team to see.
Especially at that time, because they weren't too far gone.
Right.
And even for one show, man, they'd have tore the entire house down.
Oh, dude, the roof would have blown off the building. I can just imagine that entrance. That would have been incredible.
Yep. So the other thing that I have here is, and I thought this might have been the most incredible revelation out of all of this, is that Dave Meltzer says that it is believed that Vince Russo has turned over a new leaf, as the old Russo would have gotten into an immediate public war of words. And I just hope so bad that instead of responding and getting into this pissing contest, that Russo just wrote everything down, because he had the foreknowledge that podcasting was going to be a thing 15 or 20 years later, and that he could just sound off, bro, on the microphone over and over again and say, yeah, Ric Flair, you knew how to wrestle, but you never increased ratings, bro. I wish so bad that he just pocketed that, son, and just waited to bring that back out later whenever the fires could be brought on.
Him being in journalism too, he probably did have the foresight. Like, I wouldn't put it past him. He seems crazy enough to do that.
Yeah. And look, man, he was smart enough to be in a video store when it made all the money, to leave before it stopped making all of the money, and then just cash in on random things afterwards. So yeah, there's that. Vince, we're giving you some credit here. Intermediately. Yeah. So this was the other thing that I needed to put out here. With the Who Killed WCW doc just coming out, and basically with the portrayal of everybody, including Bischoff being this big baby face at the end, Dave Meltzer wrote this, and this is going to be a direct quote from the July 19th, 2004 Observer. Again, this is 20 years ago, literally almost to the day. I think to this day, Russo doesn't realize the damage he did to WCW. Everyone, probably even Eric Bischoff, has come up with their rationalizations for what happened because there was so much incompetence that there's plenty of blame to go around. But all the behind the scenes incompetence doesn't obfuscate the fact that TV was horrible. And among those who continue to watch TV, they ran most of them off as paying customers. I don't know what Bischoff truly believes, but to him, on a business level, I think life is all about playing a game and it doesn't matter. In a sense, he was like Russo, coming up with a million ideas, some of which hit big and contributed to turning around stagnant companies, others of which flopped big and did more damage than perhaps anything in the history of the same industry, and only a few years later. While some group them together, I think there's a major difference. And this is from someone who historically has a good relationship with Bischoff at times, but not with Russo.
I hate to say it, but like Dave couldn't be any more right.
Dude, just nailed it.
He literally nailed it 20 years ago.
I thought that was incredible. And especially with that having come out dude, nobody to this day wants to take credit for the company cratering.
No, it's always put on somebody else.
And the closest thing to it is actually Nash, because he's like, didn't really care if whatever happened. I was still getting my paychecks. Like
He's literally the only one that's like, I didn't care. My check was cashed, and you kept giving me more.
Yeah, but I thought that was wild, brother.
We just got to give a shout out to Big Kev. We love you, Big Kev.
We love you, Big Kev, forever and ever. One of my favorite of all time.
We do have some news on the fallout. Dave said that Bischoff can't be happy with how he was portrayed in the book, but continue to work with Rick with no problems, although Rick will probably get some major receipts in Bischoff's book. This one was interesting that I saw. DDP said it just goes to show that Ric Flair has no class from responding to Ric Flair saying Page was only pushed because he was Bischoff's friend and not because of his ability. I couldn't believe that.
You know, the crazy thing here is that the rationalization is that they didn't push him in WWF either.
Right.
Like, and so I don't know. Because I love Dally, right? Like, we're Dally guys, but it hurts to think like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that hurts a lot, actually. Flair did prove he can bury his best friends as well, as he said he wanted Jeff Jarrett in the Horsemen because he's a good performer, but Jarrett couldn't draw a dime. And regarding Paul Heyman, Flair called him a genius for his booking and influence, and he said Russo was the opposite, being someone who thought he was a genius when he was anything but.
There you go. Shots to Paul Heyman again.
Shout out Paul Heyman. We say that all the time here on the show.
I know. Dude, we throw all the flowers at him. Flair goes on Sporting News Radio on July 12th and says Mick Foley was crying and whining about his book when all Flair was doing was paying him a receipt. And here's where things get really interesting. So Bret Hart enters the chat. Bret Hart writes, quote, "Never in all of my life have I ever been so infuriated with the ridiculous statements made about me. Perhaps they were purposely designed to get my response to sell more books. Who knows? Who cares?" End quote.
So Bret Hart.
It is so Bret Hart, but we ain't done yet.
Oh.
So Bret did say that he apologized to both Flair and Hogan when he got to WCW about what he had written about them in the past. Both told him that it wasn't an issue then. And then the funny thing is, both buried Bret in their books later on. So Bret then, in this same response, buried Rick as a wrestler, saying that he convinced himself, he being Rick, convinced himself and the fans that he's the greatest, but the people who work with him know otherwise. He dumped on Rick for leaving WCW without dropping the title in 91. And then he claimed that he knew more about ring psychology and real wrestling when he was 9 than Flair knew in his entire life. So then he goes in on Flair as a worker. He hammers the September 1st, 1992 match in Hershey where Flair beat Savage for the belt.
This is the match where Vince made him restart it.
Yes, famous story here that Vince walked out there and said, and made him literally restart the match. So Hart said that he told Randy Savage, and I don't know if this is before, after, or whatever, quote, Ric Flair was 30 minutes of nonstop non-psychology, end quote.
Oh my God.
And then he sticks the landing and says, quote, I can tell you firsthand that Ric Flair was not a great worker at all. Yes, he did hilarious interviews, but to my taste, I never thought a world champion was supposed to be hilariously amusing. Granted, Flair wasn't entertaining to watch, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, much like Hogan, Flair's magnetism and charisma distracted from and offset his limited ability in the ring. The single greatest contribution that Flair ever gave to pro wrestling was the woo and his silly chops. First off, chops hurt, and in my opinion, they look like crap, end quote.
Oh my God. Didn't he chop the hell out of people?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, I mean, not like Flair does, that's for sure. You know, Bret was always a really good work and punch guy, especially in the corner.
Yeah.
So, but so was Flair. I don't know.
Sour grapes.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. He got them sour grapes.
Sour grapes. Sour grapes.
And so we finish off with going back to the Randy Savage deal. He was burying Rick, saying that he always poked fun at Randy Savage for laying everything out and that real workers could call it in the ring. And Bret basically said that, yes, Ric Flair can call all of his matches in the ring, and that's easy because they're all just the same match over and over again. So there's that.
I mean, they're both incredible. All three of them are incredible performers. I don't really care how you do it, but as long as you do it, who cares?
And that's just it, dude. The thing about Flair is, do you get the Flair match over and over? Yes. And is it great? Yes.
Right.
And is Bret great? Yes. And they're allowed to be different. This is literally just, you know, it's a pissing contest at this time, and it's a shame, but they're great. They're great, man. But it is so funny to see Bret just get all in his feelings and go full Bret.
And there is even more meat on that bone because we have literally 5 more months of 2004, and we're going to take many more bites of this book, I'm sure. In our last related Flair story for the week, Mic Foley got knee surgery on July 7th. We mentioned that in the Vengeance show. And it went so well that he did his first pitch while on crutches at a single-A minor league baseball game near Poughkeepsie. Foley has been in touch with people in WWE in the past week, despite the reports of the contrary, because they were saying that Foley was so upset that he wasn't talking to anybody in WWE or anything.
We transition now into our first Raw report. So we're going to pick up with the night after Vengeance 2004. Dave Meltzer said the show was, quote, too much about Eugene, and, quote, some parts of the shows were good, but they had 3 Diva Search segments that brought the show to a halt, end quote. And then he also said that when it comes down to the last 2 contestants, it'll be one of the highest ratings of Raw for a long time, but there will be some insufferable segments over the next few months getting there. And Dave with the crystal ball again. So John, go ahead. Give it to us, brother.
The show opened with Evolution wanting to beat down Eugene for screwing over Triple H in his title match. Triple H then says that everyone makes mistakes, but friends are friends. He did tell Eugene that Uncle Eric is really, really mad at him. Edge pinned Batista with a schoolboy after a long match where Edge was over with the crowd, different from the night before because they were not with him the night before during Vengeance. And Batista looked really good in the ring here.
Dave Meltzer said that this was a, quote, damn good match, far better than anyone could have expected, end quote. And that's really high praise, especially at this time. And good on you, brother Dave, Deacon Batista, for starting to turn it around.
Yeah, really, because he was not looking good there for a while.
Now, and this happens fast because this show, he looked more than competent. And then we're going to be rolling into SummerSlam, and I'm excited to see that 3-way then.
I am very excited. SummerSlam 2004 is coming up, I believe, in 3 weeks, so be on the lookout for that. Eugene then met with Uncle Eric. Uncle E said it was okay, and he was proud of him for how he did with his interim GM. He also said what happened at the pay-per-view was a mistake, and he was giving Eugene a title shot against Benoit. They then hug, and Bischoff is making that face that shows disdain for Eugene. And you
Really good production there. Like like Kevin Dunn turns into such a disaster with the cuts and the slamming and all that stuff. But they did really good at those close up, facial shots and all that. This was good.
We then have Flair doing his promo on his book with the Hurricane coming out for an autograph. We are then treated to this glorious back and forth. Please check the shorts. It is on the shorts. You can see the whole exchange. Check it out on the channel. It is fantastic. But it finishes with Helms saying that the book wasn't number one like Mic Foley's, and Rick punches him, knocks him out cold. Kane and Lita are out for the highlight reel. Lita tells Kane she's not going to be a victim, and Kane isn't going to do anything to her. She also said Matt will fight his own battles, and she thinks Matt is the father because he's more of a man.
Sadly, it doesn't work like that.
That made me laugh. Kane goes absolutely nuts. He starts destroying the set. This sets Jericho off, so he grabs the mic and says Kane is being a diva, so the two have a match. Jericho won via DQ, and in the post-match, Kane chokeslammed Jericho and the ref at the same time. Flair then beat Hurricane with the figure 4, and in your main event, Benoit and Eugene ends in a no contest. Eugene German and crossface Benoit, who got the rope break. Eugene hit a rock bottom. Benoit gets his foot on the ropes, and Evolution does the run-in and beats down both guys. Triple H pedigrees Benoit. Regal runs in for the save. He gets beaten by Randy with an RKO. Eugene then juices and gets pedigreed, and we have us a good old-fashioned heat angle to close Raw. Check that one out on the shorts as well.
And ain't nothing wrong with that, man. Really, especially coming off of a pay-per-view, ain't nothing wrong with that at all. The Raw show from 7/12 drew a 3.67 rating. That was 3.40 first and a 3.90 second hour. 4.53 million viewers on average. Some interesting notes from this. Edge and Batista gained 586,000 viewers. The highlight reel gained 572,000 viewers. And then after a little dip, the main event segment gained 1.367 million viewers.
Eugene's a draw.
Eugene's a draw. It peaked at a 4.56 rating and 5.9 million viewers. And you wonder how Paul found himself working with this guy at the second biggest show of the year. There's your answer.
You're damn right. Game always stays on top.
You better believe it, brother. So we're moving on to next week, John. What do you got for main story in July 26th?
The main story in the Observer this week was announced that the Ironman match for the July 26th Raw was announced. And that is our main event here on the show today. So stick with us. We're going to get to it here shortly once we get through some of the business here for you. But Dave Meltzer wrote, the WWE will attempt to create history on Raw on July 26th in Pittsburgh with the longest match in the 11-and-a-half-year history of the show, a planned 60-minute Ironman match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship between Chris Benoit and Triple H. It should be noted that there was not one 60-minute Ironman match on television in the 1990s, and even with the 2-hour shows that WWF and WCW had, the mindset was that even a 20-minute match was too long for the people at the time, and I would agree with that, because whenever they try to go long, they suck.
Yeah, but the bad thing is the matches are so short that it's insulting.
Right. You're
like we literally went from, extreme to extreme.
Right.
Like,
right.
yeah, we went from keep it moving to here's 90 seconds in a no contest.
Yes.
Check the last show that we just did for that for Raw is no contest, which was basically the go home show for the last show that we did.
Yeah, Fully Loaded 99 is last week's episode. Check that one out too. It's widely known that Ric Flair is one of Triple H's heroes, and he was famous for his long matches in the 80s, including a 45-minute draw with Sting at the Clash of Champions in March of 1988. His April 89 Clash match with Steamboat that went 55-plus minutes, and two 40-plus long-minute matches with Barry Windham. All 4 of those matches finished top 3 for Match of the Year, with the Sting match and the first Barry Windham match winning Match of the Year in the Observer.
And the crazy thing is that Windham match finished in a double count out.
That people would be pissed if they saw that.
Oh yeah, dude. So that was so what happened is it was supposed to be a 60-minute draw, but because of the timing of the rest of the show, because televised wrestling at that time was only 60 or 90 minutes tops. So the timing of everything else was so off that they had to do a double count out at 41 minutes and 41 seconds to make it fit TV time and to not have a winner.
Man. Well, Dave says that this match on paper is more risky than the Lesnar Angle Ironman match that they did a year prior because of the location.
Brutal. This hurts my heart.
This really hurts. I'm sure it hurts you. Pittsburgh is considered by many WWE wrestlers as the worst city to perform in because the crowds are so tough.
And the reason is that my dad wouldn't buy me tickets. I would have changed it if he just would have taken me to SummerSlam 95.
You could have changed all of it.
Oh, Papa Goose, what'd you do?
It is also always a risk to do these matches on TV because fans will know exactly when the finish is coming, and you do risk them tuning out for a while and coming back to see the final few minutes.
It's correct. And the Angle Lesnar match actually was a ratings failure, even though, dude, this is one of the greatest TV matches of all time.
It's so good. I wish we would have been doing these last year because we would have absolutely talked about that show.
And there's no reason that we couldn't somehow sneak that into something later on. I'm sure we could find an excuse. But the commercials are what make this tough. And one of the falls for that Angle and Lesnar match actually came during a break. So these are things that frustrate fans and they say, So they literally would just tune out and then come back in when they know the finish is going to be. But we even see that now where long TV matches will play best whenever the commercials are either strategically placed or they just say straight up, hey, this first hour is commercial free.
Yep.
Because it's killer. Even with, if you look at some of the longer matches that have been in recent history, every year AEW Blood and Guts gets hurt by the commercials.
Yeah.
When the WWE does the gauntlets, those are their longest matches. And the reason that they actually work is that they strategically place the commercials in between the falls of the gauntlets.
Right.
But yeah, that is an issue, is that it just breaks up the match. And you think of some great matches that we've seen on TV over the last couple of years, even where commercials do hurt it. Whereas if it was on pay-per-view, it'd be a whole different thing. So that Lesnar and Angle match actually drew a 3.2 rating, which was actually even further below where SmackDown was averaging at the time. And they even lost viewers from the 10 to 45 minute mark of that show.
That is so insane because that match is so good.
Yes. Some other ratings history with those long matches. Flair and Sting peaked at a 7.8, which was the highest rating for a pro wrestling match in the history of Turner Networks. Steamboat and Flair did a 5.0, but Dave said that was because the match was poorly hyped, which we can't give you feedback on. It was 1988. I was 3 and John wasn't a thing yet.
Yep. Not even close to being born.
The difference with those two matches in the Ironman match, though, is Flair and Sting was a one fall contest. So that fall could have came at minute 2 or minute 32. And so that's why people stuck around. And the Steamboat match was best 2 out of 3 falls. So people knew it would go long, but again, it could have ended at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Now people have a finite beginning and end of this match, and that's what makes it risky for TV. So Dave also wrote that Raw had few matches that ever went 20 plus minutes until this year, which the first of that was Shawn and Triple H going 29 plus minutes on December 30th, 2003. And that, my friend, was the match that ended in the double pin.
Yeah, that's a great match.
It's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. And that one actually drew. However, the Orton Flair Batista versus Benoit Edge and Jericho match that we covered here in the archives not too long ago, that went 34 minutes, and it was one of the biggest main event ratings flops of the entire year. So will they or won't they? We shall see. But the table's set for you, brother. Why don't you take us to the Raw before the Iron Man match?
Yes, the July 19th, 2004 Raw show opened with a long Triple H promo. He buried Eugene saying he hated him, he was never friends with him, and that everyone is ashamed of him. The claim is that Eugene was beaten so badly that he'll need to retire from wrestling. He said there's no crying in wrestling, as they showed a clip of Eugene being stretchered out last week.
It's just so funny though, because like knowing wrestling, like we know what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, he's beaten so bad he's got to retire.
Back. Bischoff makes the Ironman match official for Pittsburgh and saying that Eugene was gone. Regal runs in and attacks Triple H, but Bischoff gets security to take him out of the building. That was also a short. Check that out as well. The highlight reel and Diva search happens next, and this got the Boo Birds alive.
Dude, the crazy thing with this is that the Observer wrote the winner of this contest gets a $250,000 contract. The entire developmental budget is $500K.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That's so WWE at this point.
Hashtag that's so WWE.
My gosh. Jericho announced there was an immunity card in Bischoff's office, and the first person to find it cannot be voted off. They destroyed his office, and Bischoff came in hot because there was no immunity card. Jericho's punishment is to wrestle Kane. So again, Bischoff has Kane, Teddy Long has The Undertaker.
Gimmick infringement. Teddy Long totally just jacked this dude's swagger.
Absolutely. Lawler read passages of Flair's book about Foley and Hart, and I was trying to post this on the socials, but I never got around to it, but they're out there. I can post it for everyone to see it. Benoit beat Batista via DQ. Both guys were actually cheered here as Batista not only came to work again, but he's from DC, and Triple H didn't care if Benoit won or lost. He just wanted him beat on. Batista hit a spine buster. He then went to the ground and pound rather than pin him. The match ended with Benoit hung by his ankle and Batista beating on him through the 5 count for the DQ. Batista then powerbombed him afterward.
Nice to see that happen every once in a while.
Yeah.
I feel like that's happened like 3 times in my entire life.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. You know what I'm saying? And then actually just say, you know what? Screw it.
Screw it. Yeah. Yeah. DQ me. I dare you. Like,
right.
Jericho beat Kane by count out after Jericho posted Kane outside and hit him with an enziguri. Bischoff then came out all hot and announced that wasn't the finish. The match is now a false count anywhere. They were brawling outside when Batista came in, clotheslined Jericho and knocked him out, and Kane got the pin. The main event was Edge pinning Orton to keep the Intercontinental title. The crowd was really into this, especially the near falls. After the ref bump, Orton went for a chair but got speared before he could use it. Edge covered, but there was no ref. Orton then hit a low blow and an RKO, but Edge kicked out when the ref recovered, and the crowd absolutely went insane here.
Yeah, this is really cool, especially coming off of Orton. You think that Orton's going to win, right? That this is going to be the return. And what a near fall, like to have him kick out of an RKO. I think that that's great.
Edge blocked an RKO and hit a backslide with his feet on the ropes for the win to retain his Intercontinental title.
And a little bit of poetic justice here because Orton's been cheating the whole time. So this actually makes him look smart to cheat. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that that's good booking.
Imagine a babyface being smart for once.
Right. And the other thing is, I do believe that they're still grumbling around with possibly teasing Edge later. And this really helps the video package.
It does.
If you decide to go that way.
Right.
So Raw on 7/19 drew a 3.74 rating, 3.73 first, 3.75 second. So literally straight line throughout the show, 4.18 million viewers. And so the rating is actually misleadingly high because they only did 1.28 viewers per home, which is down from where they are. So they're literally, not only did that rating stay in a straight line, there was basically one person per household watching it, which is nuts.
That is
like, it was literally just like you or me being in our house and watching it. And maybe my wife popped in for 15 minutes and said, screw it, I don't like this.
Wow.
Probably would have been the Divas highlight reel segment.
Must have been the Divas. I can't wait to talk about the Divas on our show.
Oh, dude, we'll get there. Speaking of, Dave said, as bad as the Divas search segment was, and it was among the worst segments on the show, it had the car crash mentality rating as it was the second most watched segment on the show. And we call this part Mongoose Eats His Words, because literally in back-to-back sentences, I'm very wrong. Oh, good God almighty. But dude, these Divas Search segments, they're so bad.
Yeah, they're not good. They're so awful.
And here's the worst thing, John. There's superstars on here.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. There's literally 3 of them in this show. There's 3 of them that will stand the test of time throughout the company.
And the one that they obviously want to win wants nothing more than to not be there.
Right. Yes.
Just incredible, brother. All right, man. Hit us with some news. What you got?
Yes. Moving on to news for the week. Dave reports that there are plans to greatly expand Developmental. The current idea is adding a Connecticut, Atlanta, and Tampa system. And Dave says that the best ideas for trainers would be Al Snow, Michaels, who he says has a great track record, and maybe Bill DeMott and Lance Storm. And literally all of these guys are fantastic trainers, minus Bill DeMott. But like literally all of them were trainers. DeMott, he ran the Performance Center for years.
And that's what I was going to say is the problem with DeMott is his strategy, but it's not like he wasn't like business wise successful.
Right.
I mean, he was the man that ran it. And dude, all Michaels did was give us Bryan Danielson.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then to have Lance Storm on there, I thought was awesome because you got Storm Wrestling Academy, baby. Shouts to you, Lance.
Right. And also Al Snow, he runs OVW.
Yep.
The Flair book is now up to number 5 on the New York Times bestseller list, which is the highest of any WWE book since Foley is good. Matt Hardy had arthroscopic knee surgery scheduled for late August to repair his torn MCL. He's going to work through SummerSlam and will likely be out until November. Interesting because the initial plan was for Michaels versus Kane, and spoiler alert, Michaels is not on the SummerSlam show, and we'll cover more in that in our build to the SummerSlam. So SummerSlam 04 show, it's coming up here in a couple weeks. We'll give you more details on that. But
yeah, but if you remember, Kane took out Michaels,
right,
and that was the idea. Has a baby on the way. He's going to go home for that, come back and face Kane. And for some reason, they thought that it was worth just carrying this Hardy and Kane summer storyline over to SummerSlam.
But Goose, what do you got for us for the house show report?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting because we have a first time ever on Raw thing coming up with the Ironman match. So what were they doing at the house shows? I thought was a cool little layer that we can add in here. So the notes that I have here are from the week that we just covered and the week again before the Ironman match. So again, the Ironman match is July 26th. For the July 16th house shows, Benoit beat Triple H in what was called a great main event that went over 25 minutes. Orton and Flair were not there, so Batista interfered. Big Dave runs in, gives Triple H the belt. Benoit intercepts it, hits Batista with it, puts the crossface on Triple H and gets the win. The next night, they had Flair there, and he was working as Triple H's manager. Batista then runs in, hits the spine buster. This time, Benoit kicks out. Flair then throws the belt in. Benoit intercepts, hits Batista, and then counters a pedigree into a crossface. Another, quote, excellent match, and that one went about 29 minutes. The Sunday night show that weekend had Benoit beating Triple H in what was called a 4-star match and also said to be better than the Vengeance match. This time, they added Regal, who did a run-in to save Benoit when Flair was beating on him. Then they did the Batista spot with the crossface finish. The weekend before the Ironman match, which this is very interesting, Benoit beats Triple H, where we have a Batista run-in. He power bombs Benoit, and then Eugene runs in to make the save, gives Triple H an airplane spin and a stunner, and then Benoit wins it with the crossface while Eugene keeps Batista from interfering. That match went about 30 minutes. The next night, same match, but it only went 18 minutes, which makes sense because they're about to go an hour long the next day. But kind of crappy that like they're sort of your finish.
Yeah, they're kind of giving it away before. Yeah, they're giving it away before you get to see it.
But it is cool that it's workshopped. I do think that that's awesome. Is that, and these shows, they're in Wilkes-Barre, you know what I mean? Like they're in smaller spots like that. Wheeling was another one. And so it's neat to see them workshopping that, and especially the times going 25, 30 minutes, and then let's crunch this down to 18 before the actual hour-long show.
Yeah, I like to see their creative process through that and what they were thinking and how it changed week to week. They tried different people, and then really the last one is when they threw it all in there to get it in, to like really try it out for good, which is really cool. That's the beauty of house shows.
And not only that, you're not going to get reports when you do it the weekend of.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're not going to get I guess now you could if people were doing daily updates, but that doesn't even really happen on the Observer site. You know, we don't get night by night house show reports.
No.
We do, but they're a week later.
Right. Now, before we get into this Raw show from Pittsburgh, what else is happening in that final week leading up to the Ironman match in July of 2004, Goose?
It wouldn't be right if we didn't revisit Ric Flair one more time. Okay. So it is reported that Mic Foley is basically just over it. Okay. He's not happy, but he is actually flattered to be such a major part of what he regards to be one of the greatest wrestlers ever's book. But he's adult enough to not escalate anything right now. He actually at first thought it was an angle to get a program going. He calls Johnny Ace. Johnny Ace says, no, it isn't. And now he's mad because if it is, he doesn't want to be part of a one-sided angle. He thinks that that's rotten. And remember, Foley was the one that really was like ready to walk out after the screw job.
Right.
Foley's not about doing secret business. So I thought that was a little interesting layer there. So Flair goes on off the record and he said many, many things. One of the most noteworthy things is that Flair was set off because of a letter that Foley sent to him after WrestleMania. And basically the letter said that Foley was one of the reasons that Flair was able to get into the match. So Flair, if you remember, check out our Road to WrestleMania show, has a broken neck and back at this point in time.
Right.
And he was supposed to just be on the sidelines. He was supposed to be a manager, and Mic Foley basically goes to bat for him and says, look, he can go. This is the biggest show ever. He should be a part of it. He could help steal the show. And Mick wrote him a letter that was like, hey, Rick, great working with you. Just so you know, like I went to bat for you, man. And I appreciate you giving everything that you did. And Flair took it very personally and just blowtorched him.
That is just so Ric Flair. You try to thank him you try to say, hey, I did something really nice for you. I just want to know how much I appreciate you. And I'm just letting you know I did this for you because of how much I respect you. And then Flair comes and blowtorches you right after.
Absolutely. I did this my damn self, he says.
Yeah.
So Foley is actually working for the company. He's at the DNC, which we'll talk about the Democratic National Convention here when we get to this Raw show. As a WWE rep, he's expected to return in the fall to promote his upcoming children's book. And the plan right now is for the two to not do a program together, the two being Flair and Foley. And again, this is because if this was an angle, Foley doesn't like it because he doesn't like one-sided angles. But that could change. Stick around with us, folks. It will.
It's also important here that Foley's knee is still not in good shape. The Observer reports that his knee needs a PCL replacement and he has a torn meniscus. He's also supposed to be on crutches for a few weeks, but was off of them after only a few days. Classic.
Yeah, Yep. Didn't get the reconstruction when he needed it. Said, I'll be okay.
Yep.
Here's these crutches, Mick. I don't really need them. Classic Mic Foley. You said it. So as Flair's doing more promotions, he's now going to Canada. He's in Canada doing the off the record and all of that. Two WWE sources actually told the Observer that Flair was told to go, quote, as hard as possible, end quote, against Bret Hart. So there's a feeling that some of the company are basically using this as a victory lap and spiking the football for the issues that they've had with Bret since Montreal. And as bad as this is, especially since Owen's death. So the company people are using this as a chance to be like, na boo boo, which sucks.
And the wild thing with this is that while this is happening, Shane McMahon was actually meeting with Bret to negotiate a Hart book, to do a DVD, or to even do a DVD on Montreal. Like Shane was pitching new Bret merchandise. He was trying to sign him to a Legends deal as an ambassador for the company, especially in Canada and Europe. Like, this is insane. They're working against each other.
Hashtag that's so Vince.
Yes, very.
You know, like, yeah, what do you mean you don't want to come and work for us again, Bret? Also, you suck.
That's so true. That's so Vince.
It's unbelievable, man. So let's tie a bow on this Flair's book segment the best way, possibly the only way we can. And that's with the direct quote, the only quote regarding the book from Hulk Hogan.
Okay.
So
for me, brother.
This is Hogan's response to Flair being mad with him, whipping David with the belt in the WCW angle.
Yeah.
Which, if you remember, that was what set Flair off, allegedly. Hulk says, quote, "That is so weird. I beat the shit out of this kid." It's not funny.
But it is hilarious.
The only person I beat that bad was Randy Savage, and he really beat me. I was ready to cry and run from the ring. I did beat the hell out of his kid, and I talked to Flair first about it because that belt hurt like a bitch. Flair said, break him in right and light him up. I did go a little too far, but I was done. Flair gave me a big hug at the end. Now it's 7 years later, and he's got to sell books. But shit, he didn't tell the truth. Shit, I didn't tell the truth all the time in my book, but at least I kept it close.
Oh,
end quote.
Listen to this fucking guy. Dude,
At least I kept it close.
Hogan's never kept anything close. He can't get anything right.
He's lied for 35 straight years.
Yeah, going on 36 because it ain't going to change next year either.
It's so good, man. I do love that at the end he literally just said, yeah, I'm a liar too.
But we go from one legend in Hulk Hogan to another one in Steve Austin. He suffered a hamstring injury while training for football scenes in The Longest Yard. He's still living with DDP. Not sure if this is the accountability crib, but it's one of the cribs. Has not been in contact with anyone in the company, but DDP said he just needs some distance. And DDP is also working on a yoga video aimed at the young males market. Own your life, baby. Bang.
He in 2004, 20 years ago this week, Dally is ready to change some lives.
Oh man, let's go.
Arthur has no idea what's coming, man.
Arthur has
Arthur's just eating so much McDonald's right now and not being active, and he's 10 years away from doing splits.
Yes. Little does he know, man.
So our last bit of happenings before we get into the Raw show. This is a name I bet you wouldn't have on your bingo card. Joni Lauer made waves after her July 22nd Howard Stern show interview. She said that she and Sean Waltman had broken up because Triple H got Waltman his job back as long as he went to rehab. If you remember, we talked about Waltman being backstage. I believe it was the Road to Mania 20 show because he was backstage at the No Way Out pay-per-view. And I feel like that was the one that we had talked about him being backstage there.
I'm pretty sure we talked about that.
So Meltzer says that he doesn't believe a job's waiting for him, even if he does go to rehab, but it could be a sign that he's close, as WWE would be paying for the rehab. So why not reap your benefits afterwards? He also says that wrestlers in this position should have to do an indie trial first, as Eddie was a thriving success, worked all of his indie dates, turned away the party scene, and basically proved himself. And then Scott Hall was the opposite, and even though his indie run was a disaster, the WWE signed him anyways, and his WWE run was a disaster. Right. So they didn't learn their lesson there. So Dave's basically saying, like, make these guys prove it first. So Lauer also brought up Triple H marrying Vince's daughter and said people in the company were, quote, immoral and unethical, end quote. And she called Triple H triple ass over and over again. Her physical appearance was described as not well, and she also went into detail over problems with the WWE, threatening to sue her over using the name Chyna Doll, as well as all of her different issues with the law, including multiple arrests. John, did you see the Vice thing on Joni Lauer at all?
I did. It was good. It's hard to say it was good because it was like literally so sad. That's the only way to put it. It was incredibly sad.
And so, like reading this, I could picture her giving this interview because of her being so screwed up on those clips from Howard Stern. And I'm not saying that this was the same interview, but it was sad to see like her just being all destroyed, on TV. Yeah. And I mean, substance wise and everything. Like this is the beginning of the end, man. And that really sucks.
It does really suck. Sucks for Chyna, man.
Yeah, R.I.P., brother. I mean, another one gone.
But check out that Chyna episode. It's a Vice documentary. I don't know the actual title of it, but I'll put it in the description below for everyone to check it out if they want to check it out. It'll be in the description.
There's certainly like a 9-minute clip that's readily available on YouTube, so we can throw that on.
Yep.
All right, brother. So now we're here. So please take us to the review of the July 26th, 2004 Monday Night Raw.
Before we get into the review, the signature open at the beginning of these shows, it's so good. There's nothing better than them showing Eric Bischoff's face and it immediately gets booed. And then you immediately get a pop because they show all the divas standing there.
Yeah, the signature is great. It really is. When that comes on every time, that's the same nostalgia feels as, sort of reminds me of what happens at the beginning of this episode. Whenever the World Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
I love it, dude. I do. And it has its own little thing to it. But man, little did the fans know what this Diva Search was going to be tonight. Woo-hoo!
So the remaining divas in the Diva Search are dancing on the screen, and you will recognize some of them immediately. We get Michelle McCool, Christy Hemme, and Maria Kanellis.
Dude, they showed McCool, and all I could think about was her making pancakes with The Undertaker.
Same. And the other thing I noticed, her attire has not changed in 20 years.
You have that exactly right.
I noticed that. I was like, she literally wore that probably on Raw when she visited WrestleMania weekend.
I didn't know it was her until I saw how she was dressed and I knew it was her, but I had to confirm it was her, right? But I was like, oh my God, dude, yeah, exactly it. You're dressed the same. The only difference is you're missing a plate of flapjacks in your hand standing next to the dead man.
Of course, we got the coach hosting the Diva Search, and they're making an elimination as they eliminate Julia, and they immediately played Creed. And
this was so good.
I exploded. It was so good. But Coach gives the ladies their assignment tonight as they have to verbally seduce a former WWE superstar. I can only imagine what's going to happen here.
I had low expectations when I heard that, and oh, baby.
They immediately run a package for the main event, and this really made it like this was for everything. They really did. They really tried their hardest on this show to make this main event feel very special. The Intercontinental Champion Edge heads to the ring, and the ring is full of superstars, and then Matt Hardy's music hits. JR and the King are confused about what is happening as they haven't announced anything yet, but there's plenty of entrances here. Jericho comes out next, and there's still confusion going on about what is happening. Kane comes down to the ring. Evolution follows him with Batista, Flair, and Orton. Bischoff's music hits, and he announces that all the men in the ring are going to compete in a 20-man over-the-top battle royal, and the winner will face the champion at SummerSlam.
Man, once he said that, I went immediately back into nostalgia mode. I knew who the last two were, and I remembered exactly how I felt when the last two were there. Yeah. And this was good, man. This was a good pick by you. I'm glad we watched this one.
So William Regal was eliminated first by Evolution. Then Jericho and Edge eliminate Tyson Tomko and Chuck Palumbo. But they go to commercial break, and then when they come back, they show Kane eliminate Val Venus and Matt Hardy. But Matt Hardy had jumped back into the ring to attack Kane, but they jump back live, and great friend of the show, the Hurricane, is sadly eliminated by Rodney Mack and Stevie Richards. So screw you, Rodney Mack and Stevie Richards.
I just wouldn't have had Rodney Mack on my bingo card. I was shocked that we saw Rodney Mack here.
But Rosie, tag team partner of the Hurricane, is right there to give both of them the double clothesline, and they are eliminated.
This happened, and I immediately said to myself, brother, if this was 2024, Rosie might actually win this damn thing.
That's actually true.
Yes.
That is so true.
I was like, that's immediately where I went. I was like, oh, dude, what if Rosie won? Oh, my God. Dude, he would win it if it was today.
He would be in the bloodline.
Yes.
But sadly for Rosie, Jericho went right after him, and he was hanging on the apron whenever Edge drop kicked Rosie over the top rope. And it's kind of weird because we're seeing Edge and Jericho working a lot together here. Tajiri eliminates La Resistance, and then he tries to get Kane and a tarantula, which I couldn't believe he was trying to do, but then he immediately gets eliminated. Randy Orton is getting double teamed by Jericho and Edge, but Evolution save him. Flair gets thrown off the top rope and put into the walls by Jericho. Edge speared Kane, but Kane sat right back up. We get a huge stare down in the middle by Kane and Batista, and this got an insane reaction.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah. Oh, whenever they did that, I got up for that. I was excited.
Well, that was like the OG Lesnar and Gunther reaction. You know what I mean? Like that, like it's that kind of deal. It's where you just have these hosses. That's awesome.
It is. But that resulted in Kane getting spine busted and Rhino gored Batista, and the crowd erupted on that spear. That was an amazing gore by Rhino. But then we have Maven eliminating Ric Flair.
And Maven very much on the gas here.
Oh,
Purely speculation.
100%.
But also absolutely on the gas here.
I'm pretty sure he talks about that on his YouTube channel, about how he was on the gas.
Okay, well, that makes me feel a little bit better, because I'll tell you what, brother, he looks very different than the guy that just had a good drop kick that threw out the damn Undertaker. Royal Rumble 2002. That was my limited fake Maven.
Batista eliminated Rhino. Edge, Jericho, Orton, and Batista, they all eliminate Kane. Maven nearly eliminated Orton, but Orton countered, and Maven is then gone. Batista tried a Batista bomb on Edge, but Edge countered, and Jericho helped him over the ropes. Orton could have saved Batista, but he didn't. And then Jericho immediately turned on Edge.
This is great booking. This is great booking.
It's so good.
You have set up Orton's first step out of line.
Yep.
And now we have Jericho and Edge. We're already good for that match at SummerSlam.
Right. It's incredible booking.
Yep.
So your final two are Jericho and Orton, and the crowd was really behind Jericho here. They start brawling in the middle of the ring. Orton tried to slingshot Jericho over the ropes, but Jericho countered, and Orton had his shoulders trying to eliminate himself. Orton got back into the ring and threw Jericho over, but Jericho skins the cat. Orton clotheslines Jericho back over the ropes, but Jericho is still hanging on somehow here. Jericho is trying to pull Orton over the ropes like Benoit pulled Big Show over in the Rumble. Both men are on the apron trading blows, but Orton somehow jumped back into the ring, and he RKOs Jericho through the middle rope, and Jericho is he's trying his damnedest here to hang on to that rope. He hangs on somehow, but Orton throws a kick at Jericho's hands. Jericho falls on the floor, and Randy Orton is getting your main event championship match at SummerSlam.
Dude, I love this. And I'm telling you, this is once we started watching this, I was like, oh my God. Like, I remembered these two, and I remember thinking, oh my God, it's going to be Benoit and Jericho at SummerSlam.
Yeah.
Like, that was where I went, because the Canadian guys, they just had all these matches with these great workers. Like, I literally thought that was going to be Raw's version of Eddie and Angle.
Yeah.
Was these just super workers? And I was over the moon, dude. I thought I figured it out. I was like, oh my God, we're on the same page. And that isn't how it turned out, obviously. But dude, the booking is excellent. And especially seeing how the card shakes down and where they go, they weren't wrong. You know, I was devastated when I was a 19-year-old kid or whatever, but which is way too old to say that I was devastated.
I guess you can be devastated anyway.
Yeah, here I am buying my cigarettes and lottery tickets and devastated at play fighting. But
we get the coach who's backstage with the Divas, and we're going to see them seduce a former WWE superstar next. So Coach lays the rules out, and the Divas have 20 seconds to seduce the superstar, and Michelle McCool is first. She stands in front of the curtain, and she is seducing, drumroll, brrr, it's Kamala! Dude, I exploded. That is the exact noises he made the entire time. I literally couldn't be contained at how hilarious this was. The noises the belly slapping, it was incredible. Carmella completely didn't understand the assignment, although she's clearly the one that they want to win. And I just didn't even have any words. Like, the best part was that they didn't even seduce him at all. But the king announces that they're going to come out in bikinis when they come back from commercial. But this was incredible. I love this segment. I love it. Love it.
Dude, oh man. So this segment was so bad. Like, I was laughing at Kamala. I was laughing at Kamala, but none of the girls knew who Kamala was.
Right.
Which was something, because like, you're about to get a $250,000 contract. And like, I guess I'm being too picky, but like, could somebody please know who Kamala is?
Yeah.
And it was just so cringe though, because they're supposed to verbally seduce him. All he's doing is going the whole time. And so they're squeezing his nipples. Yeah. The one girl just starts just twerking on him. It was so cringe. But I couldn't stop looking, and I'm laughing at Kamala because I'm sure because dude, Kamala's just from Detroit, right? Like, he's just a dude. And so to have all these chicks here and he's in full gimmick with moon belly and nipple paint on, just screaming like a savage. I'm sure he's dying, but it was just, it was something. So I looked up what Meltzer said, and Dave Meltzer said this, quote, "The Diva Search was next, and this thing is feeling like mid-season of the XFL in that it's dying, but there's more death to come. The idea was all the women had to verbally seduce Kamala. It was funny for about 5 seconds, but it never ended. And then 9 women did almost the same thing while Kamala just did his jungle sounds. The live crowd didn't turn on them, but didn't cheer anything either." And then, brother, they immediately go to the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah.
So we go from women in the most degradable position ever, twerking and seducing Kamala,
yep,
to Stacy Keibler, tell us what's important to you as an 18 to 30-year-old voter. And then poor Stacy, man, she's trying to talk about jobs and healthcare and stuff. Like, she didn't sandbag it. But dude, was the most miserable person there Stacy trying to be like intelligent on the camera? I'm not saying she isn't. I'm saying she had to literally be in a position where you had to act like a political pontificator for a minute.
Right.
Or was it Linda McMahon who literally wanted that place to burn like Cersei did the Sept in season 6 finale of Game of Thrones?
Absolutely. She's completely on the other side of the aisle.
Oh, dude. I mean, that's all I could think of was her standing there. Me just thinking, dude, you're going to walk away from here and they're all going to have that wildfire or whatever. And you're just going to watch this place burn from your condominium in Connecticut. Because I think that they were in Boston.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But what a contrast, man. Holy cow.
They really did it. They really did it there. When we get the SmackDown Rewind, where we see The Undertaker challenge JBL for the title at SummerSlam, Kurt Angle getting fired as general manager, and he has to face Eddie Guerrero at SummerSlam. So there's your little SmackDown look ahead for SummerSlam.
That segment's great. I can't wait to talk about that. That's a great segment.
It is. So Coach brings the Divas out in bikinis on stage for the viewers to cast their votes online. Backstage, Evolution is congratulating Randy, and Triple H then walks in. Randy says it's going to be an honor facing Hunter at SummerSlam, and he wishes him good luck. Triple H says that he doesn't need luck because he's the game.
This was a great segment because Randy Orton looked like a 22-year-old kid here in a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah, like I thought that was really well done.
Yes, check the shorts. The video of it is on the shorts. The main event is the 60-minute Ironman match between Triple H and Chris Benoit for the World Heavyweight Championship. That Triple H slap to the head on Benoit at the beginning of that match, and when they were teasing that test of strength, like, that felt personal. Like,
I think it probably sort of secretly was.
Yeah.
Like, Triple H knows that he's messing the guy with fake special needs, and this guy has the belt and he's going to be losing to Randy. I don't know, man. You're right about that.
They got into some great chain wrestling right away, and Benoit nearly got the crossface on Hunter a few minutes in, but Hunter rolled out of the ring. Hunter nearly got the pedigree when he got back into the ring. The crowd was really behind the heel Triple H here, which was odd, which makes more sense to what Dave was saying about the crowd.
Well, and the thing is, a dead crowd is going to allow for heel responses more.
That is true.
Because you know who's cheering for the heels?
Friend
of the show, Triggs.
Yeah, and me.
And so it's going to be very loud compared to if people are sitting on their hands.
That is true. Well, Benoit nearly got the crossface in again. Triple H ate some vicious Benoit chops on the outside. Around the 10-minute mark, Benoit got the crossface locked in, but Triple H tried to roll out, but instead he ended up rolling himself up for a pin, and our first fall comes as Benoit goes up 1-0 with a little under 50 minutes remaining as we go into our commercial break.
I'm going to say this multiple times. I thought that the booking of the falls was done really, really well.
Yes, it was done very, very well.
The order, the number, and the times, I thought were all done really, really well.
Yes. So we come back from commercial, and Benoit continues his control in the match with submission and holds. Benoit did a tope, and he nearly went into the front row of how fast he was going. But during the commercial break, Triple H was thrown into the ring steps, and he got back into the ring with around 36 minutes remaining. Benoit put Hunter in an Indian deathlock.
JR was so excited to call that.
I know. That's the reason he was an Indian deathlock, because
he's in this Indian deathlock. Yeah. He said he was so excited to call that.
So they were in the Indian deathlock, and there were several near falls, but they were broken with an eye rake by Hunter. Benoit got up and he put Hunter in the figure 4, and Hunter refused to tap, and Benoit was bleeding from the mouth. Triple H was able to reverse the pressure and roll Benoit over and break the submission. Benoit got the 3 suplexes on Hunter, went for the flying headbutt, but Hunter was able to roll out of the way. Hunter yeeted Benoit into the turnbuckle. He hit the pedigree, and the crowd got way up for the tying pin here. They are 1-1 halfway through this battle. Hunter then stacked the ring steps on the outside, and then he threw Benoit on his chest, and Benoit was counted out, so Triple H takes the 2-1 lead with 28 minutes left. Hunter then yeeted Benoit into the turnbuckles 2 more times. Hunter sent Benoit into the ropes. He hit a spine buster and went up 3-1, and we have 21 minutes left.
I love this. The way that this is worked is the way that every Ironman match ever should be worked. If you remember the Rick Rude match, where it was just, oh my gosh, these are straight falls. This is one Kenny Omega versus Pac, where Pac said, you know what? Let me take this DQ fall and I'm going to murder you with this chair. And then I'm just going to pin you 3 straight times. I love whenever that tact is taken. I think that that's excellent Ironman match psychology.
I totally agree with you. It really works here in this match. So they come back from commercial, and Hunter goes for the pedigree, but it's broken up by Benoit. Benoit got the sharpshooter on Hunter, and does anyone sell a submission like Triple H does? Like, I actually believe he's in excruciating pain when he's in it.
That's a really good point. And for him, look, Triple H is famous for the reign of terror, but when Triple H is invested in programs, Triple H puts over what he needs to put over, man. And he's going to lose this match. And maybe you could say that the ulterior motive here is that's why he's selling so much. But you're right, dude. He looks great selling this. And this is awesome.
So Benoit has the sharpshooter locked in for a long time, and Hunter eventually taps, and Benoit inches closer to tying it up. It's 3-2 with 15 minutes left. Hunter rolls out of the ring, crawls around the outside. He then gets back into the ring. He goes for the double axe hammer off the top rope, but Benoit caught him into the crossface, and Hunter got his foot on the rope. But Benoit stood him up, put him right back in the crossface for the tap, and it's all tied up 3-3 with 12 minutes remaining. Batista and Flair make their way to ringside, and we go to commercial, and we come back with 8 minutes left. Benoit is thrown to the ringside with Batista standing over him. Batista throws Benoit headfirst into the ring post while Hunter distracted the ref, and Benoit is busted wide open here. Benoit.
Oh, he juiced a gusher. He juiced a gusher here.
Oh, yeah. Batista throws Benoit back into the ring, and Benoit kicks out of a near fall with nearly 6 minutes left. Benoit tries to hit the three Germans, but is stopped by Hunter, who pushed Benoit into the ref, who was in the corner. He goes for the clothesline, but Benoit absolutely destroys the ref here. Benoit puts Hunter in the crossface, and Batista and Flair interfere. Hunter hits Benoit with a chair, but there's no ref for the count. Bischoff sends another ref out, but Benoit kicks out. Hunter tries to pin 2 more times, but Benoit kicks out again. Hunter gets so mad at the ref for not counting fast enough that he decks the ref, so we have no official at ringside again. Evolution hops in and starts destroying Benoit in the corner. The crowd is booing, but then all of a sudden, there is an eruption. Eugene is coming through the crowd. Eugene is running wild. He takes out Flair and Batista. He hits Hunter with a rock bottom. He takes out Uncle Eric on the apron, and then he hits Hunter with a chair. There's 1 minute and 30 seconds left, and Benoit is crawling to Hunter for the pin. Benoit lays his arm across Hunter with 46 seconds left. Eugene is picking up the ref and throws him into the ring. There's 20 seconds left. The ref slowly counts to 3. Benoit goes up 4-3 with 5 seconds left, and he retains the World Heavyweight Championship. What a match.
Yeah, the drama at the end of this was awesome. And I'll tell you what, man, this was one that, now it wasn't 60 minutes because we didn't have commercial time on the network, but it didn't feel like a 40-minute match or 45-minute match or whatever. Like this flew by, and a lot of credit to those guys for not just selling holds and everything. Look, dude, Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. Bret Hart, we say, is one of the greatest ever. And that Ironman match is fine.
Yep.
And this is somebody that, like, dude, I love Shawn. I feel like Shawn had a dozen 5-star matches, and in real life, he only had 3 or whatever, 2 or 3. But I thought that film was fine only because of the pace in the beginning was so slow.
Yep.
This was not that case. These guys worked the entire time. I thought the drama at the end was excellent, and I thank you for choosing this one. I thought that this was really good.
Thank you. I knew that we had a good one in store. I was hoping it was as good as I remember, and it lived up to the hype.
So Dave Meltzer said it was the wrong city. Telling people ahead of the time it was going to be 60 minutes may have been the wrong strategy. It was a good match, although for many reasons, a lot of which weren't the fault of the competitors, it didn't come off as strong as a 60-minute match last month between Samoa Joe and CM Punk.
Wow.
So according to many live reports, television both minimized the strengths and weaknesses of the crowd. During the first half hour, things were bad. While the only chant audible on air was, "Here we go, Steelers," Dave says, local sports team. For all the Observer nerds, "Here we go," which is the notable chant at sports events when things are boring. Dave says notable during several dull WWE matches and all over the second and most infamous Ken Shamrock versus Dan Severn UFC match. Live reports also indicate some boring chants, several "We want Eugene" chants, and even a few refund chants. It was said that when the crowd was really about to turn on the match, the wrestlers got them back in, which is always awesome, man. It just shows good work. The second half, it was different. Reports where the crowd, particularly at the end, were far harder than it came off, although the biggest pop was the appearance of Eugene and not anything the wrestlers did in the match, although Benoit being victimized by a 3-on-1 with no ref certainly helped build the heat for the pop. From a television standpoint, the show did a 3.58 rating, which is well below what it usually does. It was the lowest rating for a Raw episode since the 6-7 show, which did a 3.39. On the bright side, the show drew 8,000 fans to the Mellon Arena, well above what expectations are for Raw in a bad city like Pittsburgh, Dave's words, not mine. And a lot of the tickets were sold late, indicating that people did buy tickets to see this match. Total TV viewers per household were up to 1.41, which is better than what they'd been doing for much of the summer. That last show John and I just talked about did a 1.28, so we are up here. As predicted, the audience tuned out in droves about 10 minutes into the match and didn't come back until the final 10 to 15 minutes. A full 13% of the audience, 630,000 viewers, tuned out after the 12-minute mark of the match. They trickled back slowly after the next 40 minutes, but even from the 40 to 55-minute mark, the match did a 3.53 rating, well below show average. The big audience comeback came in the last 5 minutes as 786,000 viewers came into the end of the show to give it a 4.24 rating and a 5.27 million viewer segment. Dude, 786,000 people came back for the finish.
That sounds like me, because my mom would peek back the hallway to see if I had the TV on still. Hurry up and turn it off. I knew that it was coming back on. I knew it was 60 minutes, so I waited, and then I would turn it on because mom usually went to bed around 10:30, so I would be able to catch the very tail end of this Raw.
Brilliant. So Dave then says, for the final fall, Orton didn't come out, which was either brilliance in long-term planning or luck. For one thing, with Orton having lost twice to Edge in recent weeks, which would also be a good argument not to turn Edge until they play out a program in the fall, he doesn't need to be part of any failure leading into SummerSlam unless it's a TV loss to a future contender. Second, since Triple H versus Orton is the long-term direction, the question by Triple H over where was Orton, particularly after he wins the title, this is being Randy, unless the plan changes, makes for a small, good tease for the long-term goal, similar to the small teases that led to the Hogan-Savage split in one of the company's biggest manias in 1989. So Dave says, whether by accident or by plan, brilliant, because Triple H can say, where was Randy? Randy said it's going to be an honor to face you, pal. Like, these seeds are all very good.
Yes. So that is the July 26th, 2004 Raw, the 60-minute Ironman match. Let us know in the comments what you thought about this match, because this was an all-timer in my book. I remember watching this, coming in for the last 10 minutes to see the ending of this, but I remember it just like it was yesterday. So we thank you for listening. Got to thank Teddy here because he curated a ton of good stuff here today, especially on that Flair book. Do not forget to check out the Eddie Guerrero show. That is an excellent listen. We encourage everyone to listen to it. If you stuck with us this long, go check out the Eddie show. You're going to enjoy it. Next week, it is Raw is Jericho. It is Chris Jericho's debut in the WWF. It happened 25 years ago. In August of 1999. We are covering that show next week. I cannot wait for that. That is going to be a good one. So tune in next week for that. We have the Scott Hall episode coming up here in a few weeks as well. And with that, we will see you next time on the Podski.